Have you ever actually stopped to think about how a perfectly simple mechanical object, just some gears, a few springs, a metal dial, was somehow transformed into one of the most powerful, recognizable luxury brands in human history? Well, today we are unlocking a seriously fascinating mystery. This explainer is going to reveal the hidden systems, the economics, and the deep psychological triggers that make a single brand worth absolute billions.
To really understand this, we have to start with a pretty wild contradiction that's sitting right in front of us. Think about it. On one hand, you have a smartphone. It costs maybe $500, and it tells time with absolute perfect accuracy, essentially for free. On the other hand, you have a Rolex that can easily cost $50,000, and because it relies on tiny mechanical gears, it's actually less accurate than the phone already sitting in your pocket.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why on earth would millions of people continue to pay thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars for a mechanical watch? The secret we're uncovering today is that Rolex isn't actually selling time. Actually, they haven't been selling time for decades. They are selling history, they're selling identity, and they are definitely selling status. But to see how they pulled off this incredible psychological shift, we got to go back to the very beginning. Section 1, the foundation, building the Rolex myth. The journey to this unbelievable valuation actually started with immense trust, and it was built through pure hard engineering. Back in 1905, when Hans Wilsdorf founded the company, wristwatches were kind of seen as fragile little novelties, way less prestigious than pocket watches. But Wilsdorf had a vision to transform the wristwatch into a super reliable tool of modern success. In 1926, they created the Oyster, the world's very first waterproof watch. Then in 1931, they invented the perpetual automatic movement. By 1953, they were launching purpose-built tools like the Explorer and the Submariner. They literally engineered absolute trust.
But, as you can probably guess, engineering alone doesn't exactly create a luxury empire. Rolex brilliantly began connecting their reliable tools to extreme human achievements. They strapped watches to explorers who were conquering Mount Everest and to submarines diving into the deep sea. They partnered with elite athletes at Wimbledon and drivers in Formula One. So they completely shifted the narrative from a piece of technology to a symbol of absolute excellence. The watch became a story people wanted to tell about themselves.
Section 2, the engine, the economics of scarcity. But this is where the story becomes really interesting, because marketing and history, they only get you so far. Let's peel back the next layer of the onion and examine the hidden business model that acts as the actual engine for this brand. First, we do have to acknowledge the manufacturing realities. Rolex produces their watches almost entirely in-house in Switzerland. They even have their own gold foundries. They utilize extreme quality control, precious metals, delicate hand finishing, and years of engineering refinement just for a single piece. The craftsmanship is undeniably staggering. But here's the real secret. The cost of those raw materials and that labor only explains a very, very small part of the final price tag you see at a boutique. So the crucial point is actually found in one word: scarcity. Rolex operates a business model utilizing a strictly controlled supply and a very specific authorized dealer network. They intentionally limit availability to protect their brand exclusivity. Now, people constantly ask, why doesn't Rolex just produce millions more watches to meet the overwhelming demand? Well, the economic reality of luxury is that producing millions more watches would instantly destroy the very exclusivity that makes people want them in the first place. Section 3, the core, the psychology of status. And that brings us to the deepest layer of the mystery. To uncover why human beings possess such a deep psychological need for these expensive, incredibly hard-to-get objects, we have to look at social signaling. This is essentially the use of an object to communicate success, achievement, belonging, and identity to others without ever having to say a single word. When someone buys a Rolex, they're rarely just buying a machine. They are buying a physical representation of a major personal milestone. Maybe they built a successful company, maybe they finally got that huge promotion, or maybe they're purchasing a family heirloom to pass down to the next generation. The watch acts as a physical anchor for a deeply emotional human memory. Section 4, the data, dominating the market. And this brilliantly illustrates that we aren't just talking about theoretical psychology here. The reality of the market is pretty stark. Rolex doesn't just compete, they completely dominate their traditional competitors in both annual revenue and overall global brand recognition. They have somehow engineered a level of desire that entirely eclipses incredibly respected peers, like Omega or Patek Philippe, in sheer market share.
But the true testament to their brand strength is seen when we contrast traditional mechanical luxury against modern wearable tech, like the Apple Watch. Even in an era where tech giants are strapping literal mini computers to our wrists, devices that track our health, ping our messages, and manage our entire lives, the physical mechanical luxury market remains uniquely resilient. People still desperately desire the mechanical object because, again, the tech device provides utility, while the luxury device provides meaning.
Section 5. The controversy. Market realities and criticisms.
Behind this immense success, there was a hidden problem. Massive wealth generation combined with intentional, artificial scarcity naturally invites some intense debate and controversy. As an explainer of the source material, it's totally vital we look impartially at both sides of this market reality. For the critics, they argue that these watches are just wildly overpriced. They point out that the artificial scarcity creates a really frustrating market full of endless waiting lists and gray market speculation. To them, these items are glaring symbols of wealth inequality, and the industry is basically selling raw emotion rather than practical value. Now, on the flip side, we have the supporters. They highlight the undeniable preservation of incredible craftsmanship and heritage. They point to the massive employment generated by Swiss manufacturing and the sheer engineering excellence required to build a tiny movement that literally lasts for generations. Both of these perspectives reflect the very real friction that happens when an object becomes this culturally significant.
Section 6. The Future, 2030 and Beyond.
Let's move to and see how this builds into what the future holds for physical luxury objects in an increasingly digital world. As we look toward 2030, the industry faces this ongoing clash between smartwatch competition and the rapid growth of wealth in emerging markets, which is heavily expanding the base of luxury consumers. By 2040, we're going to see a really fascinating tension between completely digital luxury experiences, like status in virtual spaces, and the physical permanence of mechanical craftsmanship. And looking way out to 2050, the fundamental question arises: will a physical machine on your wrist even matter as technology completely redefines our daily lives?
Well, the answer really just lies in human nature. Humans have literally always valued symbols. Whether it was rare jewelry in ancient times, fine art in the Renaissance, or a complex mechanical watch today, the future of luxury will likely rely entirely on meaning rather than practical usefulness. We don't need a Rolex to tell the time, just as we don't need a painting to cover a hole in the wall. Which brings us to this final, incredibly powerful thought from our source material. The most valuable things are often not the things we need, but the things that represent who we have become. As the world changes and technology races forward, the human desire to create meaning and attach our personal stories to physical objects, that's never going to disappear. So think about the objects in your own life for a second. What are you keeping not because it's useful, but because of what it says about you?
Thanks for watching World Decoded. Make sure to like and share, subscribe, and stay curious.